The alarm went off at 2:45 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 15 years. David Miller silenced it and sat up in the darkness. His body knew the routine: feet to the floor, cold water on his face, simple clothes, and out the door by 3 a.m. sharp. The streets were empty at this hour. Most people were deep in their third or fourth sleep cycle. David was heading to work. His bakery, Miller's Morning Bread, sat on the corner of 5th and Main in a town small enough that everyone knew everyone, or thought they did. They knew David as the quiet baker who made the best sourdough in 3 counties. They knew he opened at 5 a.m. with fresh bread still warm from the oven. What they didn't know was who David used to be. 23 years ago, David Miller had been inmate number 847392 at Millbrook State Penitentiary. Armed robbery. 20 years, served 18 with good behavior. He'd been 32 when he went in, angry and reckless. He was 50 when he got out, broken and determined never to go back. Prison had taught him anger management, trade skills, and how to survive. But baking had taught him peace. An old instructor named Ray had run the prison kitchen. Bread doesn't care about your past, Ray used to say, kneading dough with weathered hands. You put in the work, follow the process, show patience, bread rewards you. Just like life. David had learned, and when he got out, baking was the only honest skill he had. Now, 15 years later, he unlocked the bakery door and stepped into the familiar darkness. He didn't turn on the main lights, just the small lamp over his workstation. The flour was already measured. The starter was bubbling, ready, everything in its place. David tied on his apron and began. Mixing, kneading, waiting, shaping, baking. The rhythm was meditative. His hands knew what to do. His mind could wander, but his hands always knew. By 4:30 a.m., the first loaves were in the oven. By 4:50, the smell of fresh bread filled the bakery. By 5 o'clock, the first customers would arrive. But at 4:35 a.m., David heard something unusual, a sound at the back door. Scratching, then a thud. He froze. Old instincts kicked in. Someone was trying to break in. David moved quietly to the back, grabbing a rolling pin, not as a weapon, just in case. He reached the back door and yanked it open. A kid fell backward, landing hard on the concrete. Skinny, maybe 19, wearing clothes too big for his frame and a face too old for his age. The kid scrambled to his feet, ready to run. "Wait," David said. The kid froze, eyes darting for escape routes. "You hungry?" David asked. The kid's defenses cracked slightly. I wasn't trying to rob you. I was just the dumpster. I asked if you're hungry." A pause, then quietly, "Yes." "Come inside." The kid hesitated. David could see the calculation happening. Trust versus hunger. Hunger won. Inside, David pointed to a stool. "Sit." The kid sat, wary, ready to bolt. David pulled out a still warm loaf of rosemary olive bread, sliced off a thick piece, added butter, and handed it over. The kid stared at it like it might disappear. "Eat," David said. The kid ate, fast at first, then slower, savoring. David went back to work, shaping the next batch of dough. After a few minutes of silence, he spoke without turning around. "What's your name?" "Jake." "Jake what?" "Just Jake." David nodded. He understood that answer. "You got a place to stay, Jake?" "Sometimes." "You got a job?" "Who's going to hire me?" There was bitterness there. "No address, no resume, no references. I'm nobody." David's hands kept kneading. "You know how to follow instructions?" "I guess." "You willing to work?" Jake's eyes narrowed. "Doing what?" David turned and looked at him directly. I need help. Mornings, 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. I'll teach you to bake. You work, you eat. Simple as that. You don't even know me. True, but I know hunger, and I know what it's like to need a chance. David went back to his dough. You interested or not? Jake stared at him for a long moment. Why would you do this? Because someone did it for me once. The next morning, Jake showed up at 2:55 a.m. David was surprised. He had half expected the kid wouldn't come. You're early, I said. Yeah, David said it. You said 3 a.m. Good. Wash your hands. Let's get started. David didn't ask about Jake's past, didn't ask where he slept or what brought him to this town. Instead, he taught flour, water, salt, yeast. That's it. But the magic is in the process. You rush it, you ruin it, you respect it, you get bread. Jake was clumsy at first. His measurements were off, his kneading too aggressive. But he listened, he tried, he learned. Days turned into weeks. Jake showed up every morning at 2:55 a.m. David paid him in cash and bread. Not much, but enough. Jake started looking healthier, less desperate. They didn't talk much during work, but in the quiet moments, waiting for dough to rise, for loaves to bake, they began to share. Why do you wake up at 3 a.m.? Jake asked one morning. Because bread takes time. You can't rush good bread. You start early, you respect the process. But why do you do it? You could hire someone. David paused, hands deep in dough. I do it because it keeps me grounded, reminds me who I am now, not who I was. Jake looked at him. Who were you? David met his eyes. Someone who made bad choices, someone who hurt people, someone who went to prison for 20 years. Jake froze. You're serious? Armed robbery, Millbrook State, did 18 years. David went back to kneading. I got out 15 years ago, started this bakery, never looked back. But everyone in town treats you like a good man. David smiled slightly. That's because I chose to become one. Past is past. Every morning at 3 a.m., I choose again who I want to be. Jake was quiet for a long time then. I've been arrested. Nothing big, petty theft, but I can't get work because of it. Can't get housing. Can't escape it. You can, David said firmly, but not by running, by doing the work. Every day, proving to yourself first, then to others. That's what bread taught me. Consistency, patience, showing up. 3 months in, Jake had become essential. He knew the recipes by heart, could judge dough by feel, could manage the ovens. Customers started recognizing him. Morning, Jake, Mrs. Patterson called one day. Is that rosemary loaf ready? Jake smiled, a real smile. Just came out, Mrs. P. I'll bag it for you. David watched from the back. The angry, desperate kid from the alley was gone. In his place was someone learning to take pride in his work. Then one morning at 4 a.m., 2 police officers walked into the bakery. Jake's face went white. He looked at David, betrayed. You called them? I didn't, David said calmly. The older officer, Tom Rodriguez, stepped forward. We're looking for Jake Sullivan. We have some questions about a robbery last night. Convenience store on Maple. Jake's hands trembled. I didn't do anything. I've been here every night, 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. The officer looked at David. Can you confirm that? Every night for 3 months, David said. He's with me. He's learning to bake. Rodriguez studied David's face. Recognition flickered. Wait, David Miller? You're the guy who did time at Millbrook. David's jaw tightened. Yes. And you're vouching for this kid? I am. The younger officer spoke up. The suspect was described as tall, thin, early 20s. Fits his description. So does half the young men in this town, David said evenly. Jake was here, with me, all night. Rodriguez looked between them. Finally, he nodded. All right, but Jake, if you hear anything about who did this, you let us know. After they left, Jake collapsed onto a stool, shaking. They're always going to see me that way. Criminal, suspect. I can't escape it. David turned off the mixer and sat down across from him. You want to know the truth, Jake? You're right. Some people will always see your past. They'll always suspect, always judge. Jake's face crumpled. But, David continued, that's not everyone. Mrs. Patterson doesn't see a criminal. She sees the guy who makes sure her rosemary bread is perfect. Tom Chen doesn't see a thief. He sees the baker who always adds an extra roll to his order. Those customers lining up outside, they see someone who shows up every day and does honest work. But the cops will do their job, and maybe they'll always look at you first. That's reality. But you know what? David leaned forward. Every morning you show up here at 3 a.m., you're proving them wrong. Not to them, to yourself. That's what matters. Jake wiped his eyes. How long until people forget? They might not, but you will. One day you'll wake up and realize you're not running from your past anymore. You're just living your present. That's freedom. 1 year later, David made Jake a partner. 20% stake in the bakery. Name on the door. Miller and Sullivan's Morning Bread. I can't accept this, Jake said, staring at the paperwork. You already earned it. Every morning at 3 a.m. for a year. That's 365 chances you took to be better. That's worth partnership. Jake's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? David smiled. Because my old teacher, Ray, told me something. Bread doesn't care about your past. You put in the work, follow the process, show patience. Bread rewards you. Same with people, Jake. You put in the work. You earned this. 2 years after that, Jake hired a kid named Marcus. Homeless, desperate, digging through the dumpster at 4 a.m. David watched Jake offer the kid a job, teaching him to measure flour, to knead dough, to be patient. The cycle continued. You're doing what I did, David said quietly. Jake smiled. You taught me bread, but you really taught me second chances. Now I'm teaching Marcus. David looked at his bakery, the ovens glowing, the bread rising, 2 young men learning that their past doesn't define their future. Second rise, Jake said thoughtfully. That's what we should call this program. Teaching people who need second chances. David nodded. Second rise, I like that. Bread gets a second rise, so can people. At 60 years old, 15 years removed from prison, David Miller had built more than a bakery. He'd built a legacy of redemption. Every morning at 3 a.m., he still showed up, still made bread, still chose who he wanted to be. And now he wasn't alone.